I was there in '86. They had an awesome hockey team. They were strong. They were big. They could play. They had talent. They had it going on in the net. And then you come and provide that spark in '89, right? They end up winning the Stanley Cup. And I have been traded. So we have something else in common. They lost the spark, the Canadians.
Yes.
And the Flames gained the spark in you.
Right,
but
right.
The guys you mentioned, those smaller players, and to look up to those guys, yeah, but none of them played like you. And the one that maybe did was Ken Linsman, right? Ken Linsman was the same type of guy. He could put up the numbers, and he was always a guy that when I was on the ice, you better have your head up. And I remember in New York, the first time I played against you, I forget what you said to me. He said, "Hey, where's your bucket?" And I never heard that one before. And I said, what bucket? And you said, "The one that carried a fucking puck." You said, I felt like, how fucking stupid am I to get sucked into that one? I never heard it. I mean, that little prick.
That's awesome.
But that was hilarious. When I stepped on the ice, I never backed down, and I never stayed down. And I was vicious, and I was malicious, and I don't care.
I'm alive. He's a freaking madman. Look at him going to town. That'll be a suspension.
Well, let's get cranking here, and here's where I want to start. And I usually like going back to the beginning, and we'll get to some of that, but Theo, you know, we've met over the years, and we've talked quite a few things, and we have a lot in common when it comes to the addiction piece. Tim also. What I want to look at is the Hall of Fame. Now, here's a guy who has the numbers you have, 1,084 games, 80 something points, right? You have over a point a game. And then you not only do that in the regular season, you do it in the playoffs too. And you have yet to be recognized for the Hall of Fame. And I'm just going to quickly say, I think it's because of your past and what you went through in your life that, I don't know. And today, you're outspoken conservative voice, which is fine. But I think that all has to do with we don't want Theo in the Hall of Fame. What do you think?
Well, I didn't know the Hockey Hall of Fame was a political institution. You know what I mean? So, you know, I really had no interest in politics whatsoever. Had never voted, had never, nothing. And then, you know, in 2015, I actually voted for Trudeau in the election because I wasn't happy with some of the policies that Stephen Harper had towards justice and you know, criminals. And I thought, you know, that Justin would be a guy that would bring in a little bit more rule of law and whatnot. He was talking that way anyways. And then that was around the same time that Trump came down the escalator and around that time and, you know, decided he was going to run for president. And I was like, what the hell is this guy doing running for president of the United States? And that's when I really started following politics. And, you know, shortly after Justin got voted in, I could see the country going in a different direction, you know, a direction that didn't hold to my own personal values. And, you know, here we are 7 years later, you know, heading towards communism. And that's a scary proposition, you know, and people often say to me, why are you so involved? Well, you know, I want to be able to look my kids in the eye and say to them, I did everything within my power to stop, you know, this direction that we're taking. So, and you know, what's interesting, Chris and Tim, is that, you know, they want to put hockey players in a box, you know, and we're not allowed to have opinions. We're not allowed to have a voice, you know, and you know, those of us who struggle with addictions, you know, we're carrying around secrets. And, there's a saying in 12-step, you're only as sick as your secrets. Well, for 27 years, I was carrying around a secret that I couldn't tell the world. And there was no space for it. There was no place for me to tell this story, which caused me to be sick physically, emotionally, and spiritually, to the point where I had a fully loaded pistol in my mouth, ready to pull the trigger and end my life, because I was living in so much emotional pain and suffering for the majority of my life. And I tried absolutely everything on the planet to get rid of it. But the one thing I hadn't tried was honesty. And, they say the truth will set you free. Well, when I wrote the book in 2009, the truth set me free. And so my political stance is I'm standing in my truth, and if people don't like it, I don't really care, because I'm standing in my truth. I'm standing in what I believe, and I'm a prairie kid who worked extremely hard to get to the NHL. I worked even harder to stay there. My body is wrecked from playing.
Join the club.
You know what I mean?
Join the club.
Sometimes I think to myself, was it really worth it? Right? Was it really worth it because of the way that I feel today? Because at the end of the day, what's really important is your health. And I've realized that over the years that, my physical, emotional, and spiritual health is all I have at the end of the day. And sometimes I think to myself, was it really worth it? And so when it comes, to answer your question about the Hall of Fame, it's out of my hands. The work's already been done. Everything's there. If they decide to keep me out of the Hall of Fame because of my off-ice stuff, then it's not really a hockey Hall of Fame.
Well, yeah, and I couldn't agree more. And I say that, I saw you were quoted the pinnacle, one of the highlights of your career is winning that gold medal in 2002, right? Mm-hmm. So it's not like this wouldn't be a huge honor for you, and I think you deserve it. And I don't say that because you're my friend, but you put the numbers up. I watched your career. I played against you, and then I watched it from afar. And I look at Pat Burns. And this would really piss me off about Pat Burns, that they considered him, and here he is dying of cancer on his deathbed, and they could not give him the courtesy and have the decency that honor that man in front of his peers before he died. And he dies, and they put him in the next year. The sons of bitches. It pissed me off, and I guess I'm glad I'm not involved in that, but let's go back, I guess, to the beginning, in the sense that a guy your size, and I told Tim this story and I said it to Barry, but guy your size, how does a guy your size make it in the NHL? And I want to go back to the time we spoke, and you said to me, you were talking about a playoff series when you were with Moose Jaw, and I think it was New West, I'm not sure, but they had a goon squad, and they were going to goon you. And when the opening face-off, you were out there. Tell me that story, and then how much did that, how much confidence did that give you, that one time right there, to move forward and play in the NHL? Did that help you?
Well, I played as a 16-year-old in the Western Hockey League, and I think I was 5'3", 125 pounds, soaking wet. I played my first year in the Western League. And we went up to Prince Albert to play, and Prince Albert had, the best team in junior hockey, and they proved that at the end of the year by winning the Centennial Cup. So here I am, I'm standing on the blue line, and I look over on the other side of the rink, and there's Baumgartner and Manson standing on the blue line, and they're D partners. And the first shift of that game, I got hit by Manson so hard I thought I broke every bone in my body. And I said to myself, that can never happen again. And I realized that my hockey stick was the great equalizer, while I was playing. And so I became very, Stan Mikita like with my stick. And what I did is I played a very psychological game out on the ice. I knew that I was going to compete at the highest level. You were going to have to basically kill me in order to, neutralize me. But I realized early on in my junior career that 75%, 80% of the guys were bluffers, right? And all I had to do was look them in the eye to figure that out, because I was willing to die in order to win. And if you weren't willing to go to that length, then I owned you on the ice. I could take you anywhere and do anything I wanted to you. And I know that there would never be any pushback. And then there was guys that competed at that level, at that highest level. And those are the guys that I have the most respect for. Why? Because they made me better, right? Because I had to dig deeper inside of me and find things inside of myself that I didn't know that I had. And obviously I was very skilled and very talented, but if talent doesn't work, you have no chance of winning. But if your talent works, 95%, 99% of the time you're going to win. And I didn't want to be one of those guys that, had a cup of coffee in the NHL. I wanted to have an impact, and, going to Calgary in 1989, like I couldn't have been put in a better situation because I was the fourth line centerman for the Calgary Flames. And guess what? I got to play against the other team's shitty fourth line. So in a game, the top two lines usually cancel themselves out.
Yeah.
And it's the third and fourth lines that can have an impact, right? And I was playing with Timmy Hunter and Brian McClellan. Brian McClellan was a really good player. He had some skill and he could put the puck in the net. And so, we had lots of opportunities, only playing maybe 6 to 10 minutes a night. But in those 6 to 10 minutes in a night, you can have a huge impact on the game.
Well, you said the 80% bluffers, okay? What did you do with the 20% who weren't? How did you deal with the 20% that weren't bluffing? And you remember the story you told me when that face-off, it was in the playoffs, and they sent the goon squad out against you, and you come up and fucking right in the chops.
Yeah, I didn't even put my stick on the ice. I cross-checked the guy right in the face and knocked all of his teeth out, And, back then, that would have been like a 40 or 50 game suspension now. But back then it was like a 5-minute penalty. And I could never be intimidated, I think the small guys who haven't had success are the guys that, didn't push back. They allowed the other guys to take advantage of them. And I never, ever once backed down from anything. I remember one night we were in LA and there was a kind of a scrum, and somehow Marty McSorley and I we were away from the pile, and Marty hauled off and he suckered me right in the face. And I don't think I'd ever been hit that hard in my life. And so I was on the ice, and the fucking Tweety birds are flying around my head, and I'm like, you know what, I got to get up. So I got up and I looked him right in the eye and I said to him, "Is that all you got?"
Theo, so like for me, like when I think of a guy, that kind of paved the way, or like a small player, like you're the guy. Now, did you have someone, were you the first, or was there anyone in the league, like I can't recall, before you that you looked up to that was a small player, or were you kind of the first one?
I think Mats Naslund was probably one of the first guys that, I really enjoyed watching play. Denny Savard, Dennis Marouk, guys, any small guy, that was having success, in the league at that time was obviously gave me hope and, gave me inspiration to keep going. But like I said, when I got to Calgary in 1989, I couldn't have been mentored by a better group of guys. There were so many amazing quality people on that team, and they taught me how to be a pro, and they taught me how to act away from the rink and, you know, get involved in charity work and all that stuff. And so I just played my own style. You know, I didn't emulate myself after anybody. You know, I just went out and you know, tried to do my job the best that I could. And you know, when I first got to Calgary, you know, they didn't even care if I scored a goal. You know,
Yeah.
I was more of a momentum changer guy. I was more of an energy guy, which is, I believe, which is what the team needed at that time. You know, that group had been together for such a long time and hadn't really reached the pinnacle of their own expectations. And I was a guy that came in there and provided that spark and that, you know, momentum changing play.
You put them over the hump, and you did, because I was there in '86. They had an awesome hockey team. They were strong. They were big. They could play. They had talent. They had it going on in the net. And then you come and provide that spark in '89, right? They end up winning the Stanley Cup. And I have been traded. So we have something else in common. They lost the spark, the Canadians.
Yes.
And the Flames gained the spark in you.
Right,
but
right.
The guys you mentioned, those smaller players, and to look up to those guys, yeah, but none of them played like you. And the one that maybe did was Ken Linsman, right? Ken Linsman was the same type of guy. He could put up the numbers, and he was always a guy that when I was on the ice, you better have your head up. And I remember in New York, the first time I played against you, I forget what you said to me. He said, "Hey, where's your bucket?" And I never heard that one before. And I said, what bucket? And you said, "The one that carried a fucking puck." You said, I was like, how fucking stupid am I to get sucked into that one? I never heard it. I mean, that little prick.
That's awesome.
But that was hilarious. And we got to meet years later. But so, all right. We'll go back to junior hockey if we can. I just, I don't want to get bogged down on it, but it's a big part of your story and the trauma. We know trauma. A lot of people who suffer from trauma during their lives end up in some way in addiction or alcoholism. That being said, 14 years old, going away from home, playing junior hockey, and then you're in a situation where somebody in authority takes advantage of you in a way that is just fucking horrendous and sickening. What the hell? And I guess this is part of the armor that you were able to put on and protect yourself. You had to learn how to do that. But can you get into that and how were you able to fucking play hockey and deal with that shit? Why it was going on. Let's not even talk about the NHL part. Right. At that time, how difficult that had to be.
Well, I knew I was in big trouble, and I knew that it was going to be really hard for me to get out of that situation. And, but I also had dreams and aspirations too. Right. So, and I knew that if I told, that first and foremost, I wouldn't be believed. And then second of all, that would be the end of my hockey career. Right. So I just kind of kept it inside and dealt with it. But it wasn't too long after that I discovered alcohol as a coping mechanism, which kind of, I would say that my addiction at the end of the day really saved my life.
I get you.
It truly did, because, the more numbed out I was, the less I had to think about, that incident in my life. But, I don't know. I guess I was just a kid that was so focused on his dream of wanting to be a professional hockey player, that I would have sacrificed pretty much anything to, to make that happen.
You were finding a way to survive, right? And
yeah.
And you were quoted saying that that guy, and I don't want to fucking say his name, but that guy destroyed your belief system. What did you mean by that? And how did it affect your belief system?
Well, I believe that, sexual molestation is like a living murder, right? Because what it does is it steals probably the single most important thing, and that's innocence, right? Innocence, trust, all those things that most kids get who are in a secure family environment. They get love and they get all these things, and that was stolen from me at 14 years old, and so for the majority of my adult life, I struggled in relationships. I didn't trust. I was promiscuous myself. There was a lot of things that I've been able to go back and apologize for that type of behavior. But it truly is like a living murder. There's a piece of you that gets taken away that you never get back. And I lived, the majority of my life with that piece missing inside of me. But what I was left with was a lot of shame, a lot of guilt, and a lot of anger. And to me, anger was a thing that I really used to my advantage it
was an asset for you. It became an asset.
When I got to junior and when I got to the NHL, people thought I was a bit crazy and a bit, things weren't, but I used that to my advantage, right? Because as a small player, if you can't get room on the ice to do what you do best, which is bring your skill to the arena, if I didn't get any room out there, I would have been just, another small guy who had a cup of coffee and played. And so I used that anger to create room and create space. And, I wanted you to believe that I was so unpredictable. You didn't know whether I was going to kiss you or cut your eye out. And I wanted my opponents to have that in the back of their mind that anything was possible. And I was, like I said, I was willing to do whatever it takes to win. And if that meant, swinging my stick around your face or whatever, I was willing to do it.
Man, that's yeah. You probably to yourself you didn't even know you were unpredictable probably to yourself. I can only imagine, right? Like you didn't know. Did you feel like you weren't good enough just as a person, like in life?
Oh, yeah.
You're right. Like that's a scary place.
Well, there's while I was writing my second book, we sort of had an aha moment about what trauma teaches us, and trauma teaches us 4 core things that become sort of our core beliefs of who we think we are. So the first one is abandonment and neglect. Second one is I'm not good enough. Third one is I'm not lovable. And then the fourth one, which is, our opioid, fentanyl, and heroin users is do I even exist in the world? Right. And that's what I believed about myself. I never felt good enough, never felt lovable. Every relationship, I thought the person was going to leave me, these kind of things. And so when I was rewiring all of that stuff, which is what we try to do in therapy, is try to rewire all of those traumatic experiences, I had to, really start to have a relationship with myself, because before I never had a relationship with myself. I never looked after myself, never slept properly, never ate properly. I hated working out. I hated practice, but when it was time to play the game and you throw a puck on the ice, I will give you absolutely everything I have all the time. But, when I started to love myself, when I started to take care of myself, that's when my life really started to change was when I made a consistent effort to, look after myself.
So, and that was a while. I mean, obviously you went through your
This is
entire.
it's a lifetime journey. You know
Yeah.
that, Chris.
Yeah.
I'm in therapy for the rest of my life, and I'm okay with that, because every time I put myself in a therapeutic process, I continue to get better, and I have more understanding of who I am and what makes me tick and what my triggers are. And so, I'm constantly working, on myself, all the time. Because I know if I don't,
Yeah.
it only takes one sip of that stuff to get you back on that merry-go-round, and I don't want to do that.
And I believe me, I know that as well as anybody. And, we met back in 2000, you and I. And right now, here today is the longest stretch I've had, 7 years.
Wow. Congrats.
Thanks, buddy. And it just, if you don't pay attention, that's what happens. And today I'm paying attention, and it certainly is always a work in progress. But enough about me. And so you go through your junior career and you get away from that guy.
Yeah.
What the hell? What type of feeling was that for you? Was that, were you like, did you feel that relief? Did you like, I'm free now, I don't have to deal with that? I know it's probably still there. Obviously, what happened to you, you never, that scar, that pain, but what happened when you got away from him in that situation?
It was a huge relief. And and then I could resume back into, really focusing on, getting to the NHL, right? I had 3 really big years after he left. Played in 2 World Juniors. I was the captain of Canada's national junior team when we won.
The punch up in Pistony. Right?
Yeah, that was the year before. That was the year before,
Okay.
And then the year after, we went back to Moscow, and I was the captain of the junior team, and we beat the Russians, and they had a line of Fedorov, McGillney, and Bure was there.
Oh my God, that's insanity.
Yeah. But, we had guys like Mark Recchi and Adam Graves and Robbie DeMaio and Joey Sakic and Trevor Linden. And, Jimmy Waite was our goalie. And we beat the Russians 3-2 in the same rink that Paul Henderson scored the goal in 1972. So it was just kind of added that little cherry on top, knowing that, Team Canada went
That's
into
awesome.
that build. Yeah,
that's awesome. I had Serge Savard, Paul Henderson, and Evan Conway on one of my podcasts, and they were awesome. It was just awesome to talk with those guys. But so what was it like for you now when you get away from there, and how was it dealing with other coaches now? Did you have? I mean, yeah, that was that one person, but how were you able to trust this new coach all of a sudden that you have? And did you have some trepidation about that?
No, not at all, because he was the guy that actually got rid of Graham.
Okay.
Yeah. And, his name is Barry Trapp. He used to be like the head scout for Central Scouting. And every time I'd see him, I'd make sure that I thanked him for taking care of that situation. And, I have a tremendous amount of respect for that human being that, realized that I was trapped and he had some power. And so he went in and injected his power and got rid of this guy. And, I was able to, resume my junior career and have a lot of success.
So you go off the NHL, and now you're in the NHL, and you have that early success winning the Stanley Cup, which is just a great feeling. But when you look over the course of your career, and I know you love Calgary, my best years were Montreal. I played for 2 other teams. But if you were to look back on that career, what was your? I guess it would be the Stanley Cup year, but other than that, maybe what was your best year of hockey? What's the you had the most fun? You weren't, fighting it all the time. You weren't
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
best year.
Well, I would say, the most fun I had was probably playing minor hockey. I moved to a little town when I was 6 years old, and my dad was a great senior hockey player back in his day, and so he was kind of a hired gun, and we settled in this little town in Manitoba. And when I got there, it just so happened that the 13 best athletes in this little town were all my age. We were all 6 years old, and we would play together for the next 9 years. And we had three amazing fathers who became our coaches, and they really instilled some incredible values of respect and love and caring for teammates. And they taught us about consequences, and with those 13 guys, we won 3 provincial championships in hockey and 3 provincial championships in baseball, and we were 1 game away from going to the Little League World Series. So, I grew up in a very winning situation, a winning environment, and that really set me up for the rest of my life, because once you have the blueprint for success, you have it for the rest of your life, and you can apply it to absolutely anything and everything that you do. And that's probably the reason why I've had so much success post-career, is because I have the blueprint for success. And I've had it since almost day one, since I stepped on the ice, to play this awesome, wonderful sport that we all love and appreciate.
What is that blueprint?
Well, it's just simple, basic, fundamentals, right? Hard work, dedication, respect, love and care for your teammates. It's not rocket science. It's just basic relationship stuff that, because at the end of the day, why do we put our kids in hockey, or why do we put our kids in sports? We don't put our kids in sports to create professional athletes. We put our kids in sports to create quality human beings that we set up for the rest of their lives, right? And when you think about it, what is there, 800 jobs in the NHL? Mm-hmm. And most of them are taken, right? Because Ovechkin has a 10-year deal. Crosby, Malkin, Taves, Kane, all these guys have 10-year deals. So we have, 8 million kids worldwide playing for 60 jobs a year, and that's it. There's no more jobs. So if you think that your kid is going to be one of those 60 kids every year who gets a job, but ultimately, why do we put our kids in those situations? Well, we put our kids to create quality human beings and set them up for the rest of their life. And even if I wouldn't have made it to the NHL, I still would have had a very successful life because of the people. They say, you are the people who you hang around with, right? And if you hang around with good people, which we all have in the game of hockey, there's been tremendous people. I would say the greatest leaders in our country come from hockey. The Marios, the Waynes, the Messes, the Sakic's, the Yzermans. I got to hang around with those guys too, and I got mentorship, and I got to observe how they handled themselves and how they treated people, and they were very humble, caring guys. You look at Montreal's situation, there's hundreds of those guys, who played for the Canadiens. So, I feel very blessed and fortunate to have been able to, and you look at Calgary, Lanny and Poplinski and Timmy Hunter and Dougie Gilmore and
all
Joey
character
Newendike.
people.
Yeah,
Great people.
And that's how you win. You don't win with a bunch of guys who are thinking about themselves. You win with a bunch of guys who collectively, really care about each other and want to get the job done.
So that blueprint, okay, and we all grow up with a blueprint. We learn certain things in our family of origin, good values, morals, all that stuff. But at some point, it gets skewed, and for you, it did. You got lost. Obviously, the blueprint wasn't working, and anytime you put drugs and alcohol in the mix, it can throw that off big time. And you know what that blueprint is, but you get away from it. So during your career, if I guess just your teammates, and I know you, but for the people listening here, how would your teammates describe Theo Fleury on and off the ice? How would they describe you? That's what I want to know.
Well, on the ice, a cocky SOB for sure.
Yeah. Talented, uber talented, do anything to win.
Yeah. And that, I would say a lot of my teammates didn't like me, but I wasn't there to be liked. No. I was there to win. And I was a guy that would drag guys into the fight, and they didn't like to be dragged into the fight.
Yeah, sometimes guys didn't. They wanted to kind of cruise through the game and let's get through this one.
Yeah. But off the ice, I'm just a really, basic kind of small town kid. But,
why didn't they like you? Why didn't they like you, though? Because I find you a likable guy. I've always times I've been around you. I never played on your team, but why didn't they like Theo?
Well, because I didn't follow the the narrative always, right? It's hard. You'd have to ask my teammates. It's a really hard question for me to ask or to answer, but off the ice, I think as I started making more money, that's when I started to lose myself, because money corrupts people, right?
Yeah.
And because I had lost power in my life, I could control people with money.
Yeah.
Right.
Understand.
And that's kind of when I lost myself. And then when I went to New York and basically won the lottery there, it was complete
game on,
100% complete insanity. Right. And that's when my mental illness showed up too, was in New York as well. I started having panic attacks, and I had some concussion problems too. And I couldn't manage my mental illness.
If I can just address it, sorry, before I forget, I love my time in Montreal. When I got traded, I was devastated. It almost broke me. I had a really hard time with that, and I'm not afraid to say it. I'm loyal. I fucking love that organization. I never wanted to leave. Mm-hmm. So I had a tough time when I left. And you talked about your teammates in Calgary. Did those guys, even though you can't, I guess, say what they thought of you that way, but did those guys kind of have a fence around you, a bubble around you, and help you get through those years? And then all of a sudden you leave that. Yeah. That must have been like a family unit for you that you didn't have for so many years. Yeah.
Oh, it crushed me when I got traded. I was hurt. I wanted to spend the rest, like my whole career in Calgary. Yeah. And, unfortunately, I just got I got too good, and then they couldn't afford to keep me there, and, I would have had to take a significant discount, I actually made $11 million more by going to New York than staying in Calgary. Yeah. So, at that time you play your whole career to get that one opportunity to be a free agent. And I
don't know what that's like.
but yeah, I go to New York. Well, I go from
What happened with
Calgary.
the Colorado thing? So you go to you're only there 15 games. What happened there?
24 points in 15 games, right?
Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So why are you out of
that's like
Colorado
$100 million
so quick?
contract this year.
Yeah, exactly. They just had too many guys that were under contract, right? And there was nowhere for me to fit in.
They couldn't fit in.
Yeah, and I knew I was only there for a cup of coffee. You know what I mean? So, when I was in Calgary, like we all lived in the same area. We all carpooled together. Our kids were together. All like we spent
everything together.
We were always together. And then I go to New York and
the jungle.
Yeah. Half the guys live in the city. Half the guys live by the practice rink. And I remember after the first year, like I was introducing myself to guys at the year-end party because it was like I'd never really, you know what I mean? Because it was such a different atmosphere. And then obviously it's New York and Madison Square Garden, and
it's not Canada.
It's tremendous amount of pressure, and I remember I was driving in to the first exhibition game, and I was on I think it was the Garden Parkway heading in, like almost
the West
into
Side Highway.
Yeah, West Side Highway. And I'm driving in, and I look up, and there's this fucking billboard with my picture on it, like, and I'm just like, oh my God, am I ready for this? And I was like, no, I'm not ready for this. And I signed that big deal. I score 14 goals the first year I'm in New York.
Yeah.
14, and I've averaged 30 my whole entire career up until that point. And
So the hatchets were coming out. And the pressure gets on you. That pressure, obviously, you get to New York. And I remember I got to New York, and here in Montreal, they close the bars at 2, whatever it was, or 3. I got to New York, they just stay open all night. And I remember the first night, we had a couple of days off. After the game, I went to Fleming's, and it was a couple Irishmen, friends. And I look at the clock, and it's 6 o'clock in the morning. I'm there.
I know.
The fuck am I doing? And now I'm like 30 years old. What I'm 30 fucking years old. I can't be doing this. And that part of New York, I mean, it got a lot of guys, but I backed off a bit. Mm-hmm. When did you first go into the behavioral health and substance abuse program with the NHL, and how did that come about?
Mm-hmm.
If you don't mind me asking.
Yeah. It was at the end of my first year in New York.
Okay.
I think it was Dan
Crone.
Dan Cronin pulled me aside and said, we're hearing some rumors about you and da-da-da-da-da. And, why don't you come into the program? We can protect you.
Now, you didn't know Dan before then, did you?
Well, I'd met him at, those information things that they did.
So someone called him and got him in there. Apparently.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. And Kevin Stevens was in New York, and he was in the program at the time. And he said, "Whatever you do, don't voluntarily go into the program." So, which was kind of interesting. But I went into I went into the program, and at the end of that first year, I went to my first treatment center, and started to open Pandora's box, and I just didn't have enough tools at that time to be able to stay sober, one day at a time, and so for the next 4 years, I was in and out of the program, been to 4 treatment centers. But, I look back on it now, and there was tools that I picked up in each one of those facilities that I use today, to stay sober. So,
but up until that point, Theo, like, correct me if I'm wrong, like no one knew that dark, right? And so that's kind of like, for me, you said it. You're only as sick as your secrets. So do you ever do you ever look back and so, like you said, those first 3 years, it's like on the outside looking in, if you were to be like, I'm not good enough or I don't have any value, people would be oh, well, you had 51 goals. What do you mean you're not good enough? People don't understand that. Do you ever look back and like kind of like not regret, but like how many times there had to be a lot of times where you wanted to talk about it, right? Or tell somebody,
I think that I was so numbed out that I was just surviving, I really wasn't living. I was just surviving, and, just coping one day at a time. That was it, and, there was so much pressure to perform and to score goals and get points and all that stuff that, and then, once your body gets used to a certain, routine, you just go with it.
Yeah. You start believing too. You're like, you start believing like maybe, like I gotta, I can't change this. I gotta, I mean, I could only imagine. Yeah. Fuck.
Well, and stimulants were a big part of the game, late 90s, early 2000s, where, we were taking lots of stimulants to get up for games. And then, once the game's over, you're so wired that you got to come down. So you got to go out and drink so that you can actually like sleep for a few hours and get up the next morning. So you get caught in that cycle and you get caught in that routine, and your body just becomes used to it. And then it becomes the norm. Right. And
then you feel it today.
Yeah. But now, absolutely. I feel it today. You should see me get out of bed every morning. It's ridiculous.
You do pay that price. Right. And so those New York years, the turbulence there, and how difficult, like playing and dealing with your coach and the teammates and the staying out late, and were they up your ass all the time? Were they like staying was Slats there? Was Slats on you all the time?
No, he wasn't on me at all. Okay. I love Glenn Sather and everything that he did for me in New York, and like he knew about the abuse. He knew about it.
He knew about. Did you know at the time he knew?
No, he told me.
Wow.
We had a meeting one time, and he says, "I know what happened," and he said, anything that I can do to help make your life better, I'm here for you and all that. And so, I have a tremendous amount of respect. I met with Gary Bettman too, and I have a lot of respect for Gary for the way that he handled me that day. He was really concerned about me, the person, as opposed to me, the hockey player, and all of that. But it was an interesting time in New York, and because we weren't having success, it was even more magnified. Right? We weren't winning. We didn't make the playoffs any of those years that we were there, and so that was frustrating as well, because I'd come from winning situations up until that point, and so it was really I put undue pressure on myself. There's not too many 5'6" guys who dominate the NHL or dominate a team. You need a good group of guys around you to complement you and for some reason, in New York, I spent 3 years in my own zone picking the puck out of the net and handing it to the referee, because we just couldn't play defense. We couldn't play defense, and our offensive ability was insane, but we just couldn't play defense. And because we couldn't play defense, we missed the playoffs 3 years in a row when I was there.
So then you leave, and listen, you go to Chicago from New York. When you look at careers, and I look, everybody's career doesn't end on their terms, right?
Yeah.
And everybody's career does not end like Lanny McDonald's and Ray Bork's. They win a Stanley Cup in the last game of hockey they ever played at that level, which is what a way to go out, folks.
Yeah. Yeah.
How difficult was that for you? All right, Chicago, what's the end like? You go to Chicago, you get 33 points, 54 games. Again, today you'd be, getting $3 million a year anyway.
Yeah.
But again,
well,
how difficult was that? And where am I going?
After we won the Olympics in 2002, I should have retired.
Right.
Because I was done.
Yeah.
Like after that.
But you're hanging on.
Yeah. Well, because I didn't know any better.
Yeah.
Right. I didn't know any better. And I was in rehab at Promises in Los Angeles. So it was kind of like the last treatment center. This place was like, it was in the middle of Los Angeles. It was kind of a rundown place. And, and I remember my agent calling me.
No more
saying,
cushy places for you?
No, God, no more country clubs. And I remember my agent calling me and saying, when you get out of rehab, he says, there's lots of teams that are interested in signing you. I'm like, what? Are you serious? He's like, yeah. So I was dating this girl from Phoenix. She was a dancer. She was a dancer.
No.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
And so she came pick me up from rehab. We jumped on a plane. I flew to my hometown because I do a hockey school. I was doing a hockey school in my hometown. So I go back home, I do the hockey school, and then Phoenix and Chicago were the two teams that I was really interested in. Toronto called a bunch of, there was a lot of teams that were interested, but Brian Sutter was in Chicago.
Okay.
And Gretz was in Phoenix at the time. And I thought,
so it was Gretz, not the girl that wanted you in Phoenix.
No. So I met with Phoenix, and they all got drunk at the table. Like when they were.
And here you are. Yeah.
Like I'm trying to get sober. And these guys are all drinking. And Bobby Francis was there actually, and I had Bobby in Salt Lake. He was the assistant coach with Paul Baxter, so I knew Bobby Francis. And then from Phoenix, we flew back to Calgary, and I met with Brian. And Brian had really helped me when Sheldon came out with his story in '96. Brian really stepped in and protected me, and so I felt a tremendous amount of loyalty towards Brian. And Chicago had actually had 96 points the year before, and I thought this would be a really good situation. They had a lot of great players, and Michael Nylander was there, and I'd played with him in Calgary, and I think I had 46 goals and almost 100 points playing with him. And so I thought maybe we could develop some of that chemistry we had in Calgary together. And so I went to Chicago, but like I said, I was done.
Did you stay sober?
No, God, no.
You were ripping it up again.
Oh, yeah. Well, I got suspended. I got suspended again at the beginning of the year. So almost Christmas time.
Okay.
But it was interesting because when Chicago signed me, I said, I just got out of rehab. I haven't worked out once all summer.
Yeah.
I said, it's going to take me some time to get myself in shape. And I said, if you can just be patient with me and let me, work on my sobriety, get myself in shape and work myself into the lineup. I said, I'll get myself ready. I'll do whatever I can to. So I'm doing that, and they're still putting more and more pressure on me. So I just said, fuck it. And I went out one night and went down to the projects and got some fucking blow. And I disappeared for 2 days. The fucking Chicago police force was looking for me. And
Were you in the South Side? Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Still.
yeah.
Jesus.
And so I got suspended at Christmas time, or till Christmas time. I came back, played okay, but I still wasn't in great shape. And then
you froze up again.
And then I went home to Santa Fe. I was living in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And I went home and I was working out, and about halfway through the summer, I'm working out on the ellipticizer, and halfway through my workout, I just pressed the stop button, and I was like, I'm done. I don't want to play anymore. And so I quit, and I didn't even call my agent. I didn't call the Blackhawks and tell them I was coming back or nothing. I just fucking disappeared, and then went on a hell of a bender for about a year, and then after that, I got my life straightened around. So
you got back on.
So then you went to
pony.
Belfast and had 270 penalty minutes. So clearly, everything was working.
Well, I was newly sober, so figured that one out.
Yeah.
What do you do with the anger?
Fair enough. Yeah, you had feelings.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and that's where I got sober. I went to Belfast to get sober, of all places.
And that time in Belfast, how fun was that? When I saw you went there, I was jealous because, my family from Ireland.
You should have came.
I should have coached. That would have been awesome.
You should have came with your bucket of pucks.
Yeah, there you go.
My empty bucket for my one puck. But
you know what? The Belfast experience was
awesome.
Was so amazing. Yeah. The hockey sucked, but the experience and the life stuff was incredible. It's just it's one of the most beautiful places I've ever been to. It's just raw and rugged and all that. And it was a great experience. The people there are phenomenal. Like we would put 5,000, 6,000 people in that place every night. And it was just so much fun, and there was no pressure. And, there was a bunch of guys from Canada there, and I developed some chemistry with a couple of really good players. And so, it was a fun experience, and we won the league. We won the league, that year. And so, it was great.
Good stuff. Theo, so you retired from hockey. You've done quite a few things, written songs. I heard you sing. I saw you play guitar. You're really good. I remember the night we were playing the Alumni, you broke it out, and it was cool. I never knew that about you. And certainly done a lot of things. You're on the Battle of the Blades. You now have that clothing line, Patriot Warrior, with Jamie Sale, the girl that you were on Battle of the Blades with. You have the Theo and Jamie show, Fire and Ice. Again, doing that, and listen, I think a lot of people certainly empathize with you when you come out, or sympathize with you when you come out with your book, and you exposed everything. You opened up to the world, basically, and then today, and you have a lot of political opinions, and a lot of people, certainly some probably think you're crazy for it, right? You're nuts, you're all this, all that, because you question things, which I don't have a problem with whatsoever. But do you think that's hurt your reputation at all in ways? And does that hurt you? Because people, I know people love Theo, and they love Theo, the hockey player, and they love the comeback story. But now all of a sudden the politics come out, and fucking shut up and stick to hockey. And, you know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What's that like?
It's definitely been interesting. I consider myself to be a really highly intelligent human being. And that comes from all of my experiences that I've had in my life. Yeah.
Life experience.
Yeah. And, I consider myself an expert in trauma as well. And I'm also an empath because of my traumatic experiences as well. One of the gifts that I got from experiencing all that trauma is that I'm an empath. I feel energy. I feel energy from other people. And, you know, the way I see it is, you know, they talk about systemic racism, systemic this, systemic that. Well, what we're going through right now is systemic government abuse at the highest levels, right? And, you know, we already have a traumatized society, okay?
Yeah.
Before COVID happened, the world was already traumatized. And COVID-19 is the most traumatic event that's happened since World War II. So we already had a traumatized society. We added another layer of trauma. And what happened? We saw a spike in mental illness. We saw a spike in opioid use. We saw a spike in suicidal ideation. And then ultimately, we saw a spike in people taking their own lives. And so I can put that puzzle together very easily and very quickly, right? And I've dealt with more suicidal people in the last 18 months than I had at any point in the 15 years that I've been doing this work in the field of trauma, mental health, and addiction. And so all I'm trying to do is point out to people that the reason why you're depressed or you're having anxiety or you're having suicidal ideations is because the government is abusing you, right? And as a citizen of Canada, I have 3 responsibilities: pay my taxes, stay out of jail, and vote. Other than that, I do not need the government involved in my life at any level. I'm very, very capable of taking care of myself. And when the government is constantly telling me that I have to do this and I have to do that and do that, no, that doesn't fly with me. That doesn't fly with me. You know, I have been, for the most part, lived up to my end of the bargain as a citizen of Canada, and I don't think the government has lived up to their end of the bargain. And so I'm just, well, we all know, you know, playing hockey, there's accountability for your actions, right? We always had to answer to accountability. And there is no accountability in this country. None. Zero. There's no accountability. And all I'm trying to do is make the government accountable for the choices and the decisions and the actions that they're making. And if you don't like me because of that, all I'm trying to do is discern the truth. That's it.
No, I hear you.
All I'm trying to do is discern the truth, right? And, you know, I have a big voice.
Yeah.
And I'm
you
going to
use it.
And I'm going to use it because I know what it's like to be silenced. I was silenced for 27 years, carrying a secret around that I couldn't talk about. And then I talked about the secret, and then all of a sudden, all these people started coming to me, telling me their own story, right?
Yeah.
So I'm just doing the same thing politically. I'm not doing anything that I haven't done in the past. You know, I've always been a controversial guy, right? Every visiting arena I went into, what did they do? They booed the shit out of me, right?
Yeah.
So I know what it's like to be a villain. I know what it's like to be disliked. This isn't something that's new, right? But like I said, I'm standing in my truth, and if you don't like it, I don't care. I really don't care, you know?
I hear you.
But Knuckles, you know me. We've sat down many times and had some really incredible conversations. You know, I'm a decent human being. I've had my challenges. I've had my challenges. I've had things that were thrown at me that you know that actually made me a better person. Right? All those traumatic experiences made me a better person. Made me a better human being. Made me more understanding. Gave me more compassion. Gave me more empathy. But you know, the one thing I don't have compassion for is stupid.
Yeah.
You know, I don't have any compassion for that. And I have compassion for pretty much everything else. But when it comes to stupid, it's like, I don't have any tolerance for that.
Yeah, and I hear you. Listen, and not to get all political, but again, for me, you look at my situation. I was told to get vaccinated. I had some issues from my prior drug use, and I was very concerned about blood clots, and I didn't.
Yeah.
And I got fired for it. I paid the price that way for it, and I wasn't happy. I really. I don't understand a lot of it from the standpoint of why are you doing this to people? Why? Because of this virus. One that, mind you, is the survival rate is 99.
Yeah, 99.7%. Yep.
And I've had COVID. I survived COVID. I haven't had it since, and I just have a problem.
Yeah.
With governments,
they want to control you. They want to control you. Yeah,
governments that lie, and that, quite frankly, are controlled by big pharma and big business. And I have no empathy toward them at all. I have no. I lose belief in those people because they constantly lie and tell you one thing while they do another. So yeah. I certainly understand where you're coming from.
It's the greatest fraud that's ever been committed in our lifetime, right? Mm-hmm. And all you have to do is pull up the script from 80 years ago, and it's the exact same script. It's the exact same script that they pulled out 80 years ago, trying to take over the world and have one world government, one world order, all that stuff. And, if you can't figure that out, then I'm sorry.
And God forbid you have a different opinion. You will be ostracized.
You can't.
You're ostracized. Yeah. You are
labeled.
You're bad. You're nuts. You're labeled. It's this.
But you know what? I'm more busy now than I was before COVID. So what does that tell you? What does that tell you? Right? Is that, I'm not getting any less speaking engagements. I work for a great company now, and I have my own show, and we're building a media company here in Calgary. So,
good for you.
My life is great. My life is great. I still help people in any way that I can. Anybody that reaches out to me, I respond to them and have conversations with them. And, I work for a couple great charities, the Breaking Free Foundation here in Calgary, and then
Crohn's,
and then a global mental health organization out of New York called We're All a Little Crazy. Same here, Global Mental Health Initiative. They're a great group of people to work with, and so, yeah, I said about a year ago, I said, you know what, I'm going to get back involved in life. And I got out of my house and got out of my depression and started meeting with people and started hanging around with people. And then all these opportunities came, and it's been great ever since.
Well, God bless you. And I have one last thing, and I want to go back to the beginning, in the beginning of today, when we started this podcast. How would you feel if you made the Hall of Fame? If finally Theo Fleury gets his due, how would you feel? Where would that stand on your list of accomplishment?
Yeah, I think it's probably the number one thing.
There you go.
I don't think we go into our professional careers thinking about the Hockey Hall of Fame, but once it's all said and done, it's the highest honor you can receive because it's voted on by your peers, right? And but I've had lots of really cool stuff. I'm in the Manitoba Hockey Hall of Fame. I'm in the Alberta Hockey Hall of Fame. I'm in the Alberta Sports Hall of Fame. I'm in the Aboriginal Sports Hall of Fame. So it's like, I think that I just have to be patient and wait my time and bide my time. And, if they feel that I deserve to be in there, then I would happily accept, the accolade for sure.
You should get, and then you should give your speech wearing a mask.
with the window on
Yeah,
it, though.
it's just like-
Hey, Theo, you got to have the window so
I'll
you can
walk-
see your lips.
I'll walk on the stage in an asbestos suit with a fucking oxygen tank.
A World War
back.
I mask, gas mask. Oh, Theo,
Exactly.
listen, thanks so much for
man.
taking the time, my friend. Great to see you again, and
You too.
God bless. And we will we'll talk down the road. You ever need me for anything, give me a shout. As most of you know, I'm a dog person. I have a Saint Bernard. Her name is Adele. Why do I feed Adele Formula Raw? Because I love her. I want to provide her with a healthy, well-balanced, locally sourced diet. A diet that consists of meat, chicken, fish, mixed with fruits and vegetables that her 140 pounds requires. I also feed her Formula Raw because it helps her overall energy, it helps her with allergies, and helps strengthen her overall immune system. Dimitri and Nick at Formula Raw have worked tirelessly over the last 10 years to perfect their recipe, and they've got it because you know how I know? Adele loves it. She never misses a meal, and she's a healthy, big, beautiful Saint Bernard. Hey everybody, thanks for listening to the Raw Knuckles podcast. We'd really appreciate it if you'd like, subscribe, and share with a friend.